Hi folks, it's Shannon. I wanted to talk to you today about what I do when I have a brand new journal that I want to use in my witchy practice. So if that's something that would be interesting to you, grab some tea or another hot beverage of your choice and let's get into it. So I wanted to talk about this because it's been on my mind. I recently started a new journal and I wanted to talk you through, and I know some of you are working on starting new journals, so I wanted to talk through some of how I think about it beforehand and some of how I do actual setup with the journal. So first off, I think I start with my current journal and or with my previous journals and think about what it is serving and what I'm not getting out of it, if that makes sense. So for me, the idea that spawned starting a new journal this time was the idea that I really enjoy my lunar practice that I have at the moment with the Moonwise membership, um, but I'm wanting to connect more with the sun, especially through the summer and as it's my chart ruler in my natal chart. So that was kind of the spark of the idea for me. And so the next thing that I spent some time doing was thinking about, okay, what kinds of stuff do I want to put in this journal on a day-to-day basis? And is basically I want to have a place where I can log or journal or reflect on kind of where the sun is and what it's doing and how I'm working with it. So it's kind of broad, but it is also related to a specific part of my practice. Um, so hopefully that makes sense. If not, ask questions down below and I can explain a little bit more. So sometimes there's practical considerations. I wanted my solar journal to have a sun on the cover. um, and I just happened to have this beautiful Archer and Olive 7x7 soft cover journal that's got white dot grid paper. And so I know about myself that I love Archer and Olive journals. I know about myself that white dot grid paper is kind of one of my preferred. And so bringing all of that together, I decided that this was the journal that I was going to use as my solar journal for the reasons that I talked about. So those are kind of the first two steps, is coming up with your idea of why you want a new journal and then kind of picking the journal. I think the next thing to do, you really need to have a couple of very basic supplies. One is a pen that you love, one is some kind of adhesive, and then stuff to decorate if you want to decorate. So once you have those things, I think it's time to get into the journal and figure out what you have. So this one has a pocket in the back, it's got an elastic closure, it's got bookmarks. And from there, I think you have to decide, okay, what do the first pages look like? So for me, this journal has this beautiful foil detailing on the front cover, so I'm probably not going to collage over that. And one of the first things that I do with any new journal is write my name in. It's kind of a nice thing because it makes it so that I've marked up the page and it's not kind of pristine anymore. I think that can be a barrier for a lot of people, is the writing the first thing in the journal. So for me, that's one of the first things that I do, is just write my name on the front page. Then the next step is actually to put that journal aside for a moment and kind of look at my past journals and see what things I like about how I started them and what things I would like to do differently for this journal. So I will just flip through kind of the front matter of my current journal. And see if there are ideas that I have for that. I'll flip through the back and see what do I like to do that I want to keep doing. like my washi tape graveyard, and kind of start with a list of things like I do want to have a pocket in the front or I don't. I want to have a title page or I don't. I want to have like a dedication page or I don't. I want to have an index or I don't. Those kind of questions. And then, like, what kind of reference pages do you want to have at the front that you can refer back to? So those are some of the steps that we've walked through: coming up with the first idea, getting the physical supplies that you need, writing your name in, and then kind of deciding what to do with this first page that is split. Do you want to make a pocket? Do you want to have some other thing going on there? And with the front matter too. What do you want to do here? And sometimes the answer is nothing, and that's okay. um, so then what you're going to do is kind of consider this list of things and whether or not you want to include them in the front. And you're just going to make a list of, like, I want a pocket, I want a dedication, I want an index, I want a future log, and I want my natal chart, say. And then you have to decide how much room each of those is going to take up in your journal. And so what I do for this process is I draw out little journal spreads and figure out, okay, the dedication will take up 1 page, the index will be a whole spread, the future log will be a whole spread, the natal chart can be 1 page, that kind of thing. And I fiddle with this. So I do it usually on scrap paper or in a book like this one that is less precious to me, I guess is the easiest way to put it. And so once I've figured out how much space I want each thing to take, I'll usually get out some sticky notes and put them in the new journal in the order that I think I want to do and kind of work it around until I get the order that I want. If you want to skip all that, you can. Sometimes I've gone just straight into journaling, but I like to do this process now because it allows me to figure out what kind of stuff do I really need at the front. And I've trimmed it down a lot over the years, which maybe now would be a good time to look at some of my old journals and see how this has evolved over time. Okay, here's the stack. I don't have my first witchy journals, so you can't see the, like, I think they grew out of my normal journals because I was like a writing, like, I've always been a writer, and so I've always kept journals. Usually just kind of talking about my thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. But I started, as many do, with the idea of, like, this is going to be my grimoire and it is going to have everything forever. And that was this book. And so I, like, dedicated it. I made an index. I left like 3 pages for index. And then I started in with, like, all this stuff, like a wheel of the year and a description of all the different astrological signs and the whole sign houses. And this was kind of what I was learning at the time. And then I just kind of got into it. And I went for a long time. And I had plans to, like, do things by season and by Sabbat. And you can see that that didn't happen consistently. And I had, like, this plan to do, like, I'm going to do these elements and I'm going to do this in this order. And so I, like, counted out beforehand what pages I wanted everything to be and, like, left space for the things that I didn't want to do at the moment, which is a totally valid way of working. And I got a lot of important things down on paper for the first time this way. But then I kind of set this aside and developed other journals because I have learned about myself that I am not somebody that has one journal, as you may be able to tell. I am not a one journal to rule it all kind of person. I am somebody that will start new journals, stop old ones, jump around, jump back in. I am an airy and fiery chart kind of girl. And so I am not the steadfast Virgo that I would like to be sometimes when I'm planning things. All that to say, so like I found for me that planning out a huge amount of pages ahead of time doesn't work very well for me. I split out into a different kind of journal that was a little bit less, was not supposed to be my grimoire, was supposed to be more kind of like a record of what rituals I was doing. And so you can see I had a title page here. I did my dedication. I had a table of contents or index. And then I really just got right into it. I left a couple extra pages and I started. I was still numbering pages at this time, and I was kind of going just chronologically. And I went a lot longer with that, with a lot less wasted paper. So that was a big learning experience for me. I think this one was next. It was one of the ones that I started next. It was similarly, you'll start to see a pattern. I have where I write my name in, I have my dedication, I have an index, and then I have kind of the beginnings of some of the like details about myself and my birth chart and kind of how the elements are distributed for me. And then I launched into like deep work with my chart. I planned some of it out in advance and quickly gave up on that. And then I've jumped in here with other practices at various times. This became my deck and walk journal later on, and I am becoming much more consistent with time. So I just like want to normalize that you have to kind of trial and error things for a while. This was a later one. Again, wrote my name, wrote my dedication. I think this time, for the first time, I glued pages together so that the dedication wasn't visible. I have my index. You might be starting to realize that I don't actually like indexes and that if I plan out stuff too far beforehand, I fall off. So this journal has a lot of space to be used in the future. And then I found Jessica and the Moon. So the first time that I was in the membership, I started very similarly. I wrote my name in, I kind of decorated the front. I put a dedication here. I made a title page, table of contents, and then I just jumped right in. I didn't have any front matter at all because I didn't know what I was going to want. And that gave me so much freedom to just put things in as I was going. And I learned pretty quickly that like I didn't need the index or the table of contents because when I go back to look at my journals, I like flipping through them to try and find, oh, here's my page for Gaia. So learning that, when I did my next version of my journal, I decided not to do much on the front. I just kind of put my name in like I usually do. I put my dedication and decorated a little bit. I still had an index because I was learning. And then I had planned this out ahead of time where I put in my natal chart, my solar return chart. I thought that I would use this chart of the planetary movements. I put in this huge wheel of the year that took me so much time to put together, and I love it. I put in my birth cards and my cards of the year and like my word of the year. I made a tarot tracker, which I used for a while, and kind of some things that were practices that I was doing for the whole year. This was the ancestral grimoire. I put in some birth runes. But eventually, once I got through all of that front matter, I just started. And I went kind of chronologically and let things just happen as they happen. This was the first time that I kind of planned out spreads ahead of time. This is me planning for this journal, if that makes sense. So hopefully that little walk down memory lane serves to normalize the fact that there's a lot of trial and error, and some things just won't work, and that's okay. You can come back to those journals and use them for others. I just wanted to show you a couple of things that are on the side. This journal is specifically for my work with my coven, and so that's the only thing that goes in here, which is why it's smaller. This journal is like where I do my tarot learning, not where I keep track of my spreads and stuff, but where I do the courses that I've been taking with Lindsay Mack and some other stuff like that. But as you can see, title page, dedication, jump right in. So a lot of the journals that I use the most have the least up front. So far we have come up with an idea for a journal, found a physical supplies that we need, written our name in the journal so that it's not pristine anymore, decided what to do with the front page, made a list of the things that we want for our front matter, figured out how many pages or spreads they needed, and then rearranged them in the chart, in the journal with sticky notes. Now at this point, it's kind of a choose your own adventure. So you could say, hey, I know that I'm going to have 9 pages up front, count ahead, and just start with the journaling that you want to do that day, and come back and work on the front matter later. I usually do that to some extent. Or you could go in and do individual pages, if that makes sense. So like you could start with your dedication and a quote page or whatever you're going to put at the very beginning. You'll see this one doesn't have an index because I'm not going to use one, but it does have a wheel of the year because I find this really helpful. This one is based on Varen Gretchel's version of it, and you should totally check it out. It's super cool. I'll link it down below. And then this is just reference for me. This is my solar return from this year. You can see kind of the things that have become common for the front of my witchy journals. And some of this is targeted toward the purpose of the journal, if that makes sense. So like I wouldn't have this in my Moonwise journal because that's not what I'm focusing on. So hopefully that helps. That is kind of the process that I go through when I'm starting. So come up with a new idea, get a physical journal, write your name on the front cover, come up with a list of the things that you want before you get into the like journaling, and either count out those pages and just start, or set some of them up ahead of time, set them up partially, whatever makes sense. Because I think one of the biggest things that holds us back is perfectionism, and at some point you just have to write and draw and kind of capture your practice. So do some planning, but also make sure that you don't get stuck in the planning stages, and make sure that you actually start journaling. And know that you can always come back to a journal. You can skip ahead, put a tab in, and just go from there. So like you're not going to ruin it. It's not going to be perfect. Just do the best you can and keep going is what I would say. Awesome. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions for me, put them in the description box down below, or not the description box, in the comments down below, and I will try to respond to you. I hope you guys all have a beautiful, lovely day, and I'll talk to you again soon.